So we announced on behalf of the estate of Jimmy Atchison a lawsuit against the city of Atlanta for $20 million. That announcement came earlier this week. That notice was sent to the mayor, to Felicia Moore, who is city council president, as well as to the police chief and the city attorney. The basis of that lawsuit is essentially what we have been talking about for the last almost 6 months here, and that is what we believe to be the unjustified, illegal, unconstitutional murder of Jimmy Atchison by Sun Kim, who is an Atlanta police officer. To be clear, our lawsuit is against the city. We believe the city of Atlanta is responsible. Officer Kim was a city of Atlanta employee. He was working in his capacity as a city of Atlanta police officer, and our lawsuit is essentially a civil rights action for the wrongful death of Jimmy Atchison. It was interesting to us around Father's Day, the mayor posted what we thought was a touching tribute about her relationship with her father and how much he meant to her, how instrumental he was in who she became, as successful as she became, and just how much she loved him. And it struck us how Jimmy's children, because of the action of Sun Kim on January 22nd, they won't have that vital relationship. They will not have his love. They will not have his support. He will never get to be their hero. They will never get to post memories about him and at birthdays and holidays. And so it was really, while we appreciate that because everyone loves their father, this lawsuit is about his children. It's in the name of his 2 children. And our demand of $20 million essentially is for $10 million for each one of his kids. Is it enough? No. We frankly don't think $20 million is enough. We don't think you can ever quantify with money what it means to lose a father, to lose that love and to lose that support. But the reality is that they are 2 children. They have to be raised, they have to be cared for, they have to be educated. And we believe it is a small price for the city of Atlanta to pay for what they took from these kids.
Will the lawsuit get into changes you want to see in the city of Atlanta and the Atlanta Police Department?
Well, I mean, the lawsuit will certainly touch on previous inadequacies in the police department, their failure to properly train and their failure to have a consistent, meaningful body camera policy. But this lawsuit will be about the life of Jimmy Atchison and how it was taken wrongfully by the city.
And what changes will you ask for, or will you be asking for changes in the lawsuit that maybe already have taken place?
You know, what I think the city needs to seriously consider is its whole relationship with these federal task forces and these federal law enforcement agencies, and here's why. We understand that there have been a number of killings across the country by these task forces, FBI and U.S. Marshal, and it is increasingly impossible to hold those agencies accountable because they do not wear body cameras as a matter of policy, and they proclaim their immunity from lawsuit because they are federal officials. It's our understanding that the city has tried to avail themselves of similar arguments in lawsuits involving their officers and their participation in these federal task forces. Our position is the city needs to completely either divest from their participation, but most certainly they should not seek to hide behind this federal shield. On the one hand, saying that you believe in transparency and that the city of Atlanta has to answer to the people of the city of Atlanta. On the other hand, what we don't want to see, particularly in Jimmy's case, as it has been in the past, the city asserting that somehow they're protected from lawsuits and from prosecution by this federal immunity.
Well, clarify for me, the city has pulled out of participation in these federal task forces.
They have, but it is my understanding that they still seek to assert a certain kind of immunity that is offered to federal agents when their officers, for lawsuits that are currently pending and issues that are currently pending.
Well, you just brought up, I don't mean to ask all the questions here, but what about sovereign immunity? How is the city liable here? Does sovereign immunity protect the city and the police department against these types of laws?
Absolutely not. The city is not protected from intentional violations that their employees commit on citizens. What kind of society would we be in if the police were immune from unjustified killing of citizens? So our position is absolutely not.
Will this be a federal lawsuit or a Fulton County Superior Court lawsuit?
It will likely be a federal lawsuit. We will, in all likelihood, be asserting a Section 1983 action against the city and against the officer who killed Jimmy. However, our investigation is ongoing. There may be others that we include in that lawsuit, but at least at this point, we have identified the City of Atlanta and Officer Sun Kim.
And what is his status as far as you know, still on administrative leave?
As far as we know, Officer Kim is still drawing a paycheck from the city. He is still perhaps doing desk duty. We're not entirely sure. We've been told that he's on paid administrative leave, but that he still comes to work every day, which is, beyond tragic, and it is beyond insulting to this family. It is something that the city, I think, needs to take responsibility for. Sun Kim should not still be working for the City of Atlanta, and the City of Atlanta needs to fully cooperate with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, period. I mean, that's just absolutely what needs to happen. And so it is our hope that they will cooperate with the Fulton County District Attorney, who is investigating this case, who has asked for their complete cooperation, as he has asked for all of our complete cooperation. So it is our hope that the city will do that.
What is the status of the GBI investigation into this? Are they nearing completion or?
Well, as we understand it, the GBI is nearing completion. They, of course, were not the initial law enforcement agency investigating this case. We all know that it started with the FBI. The FBI, we believe, was not doing a fair and impartial, transparent investigation and was the subject of many complaints on our behalf. It is our understanding that the GBI has come in to do their own independent investigation and that they are wrapping up. They have pledged to share their findings with the Fulton County District Attorney, which is what the family has asked that they do.
Are you worried that you will be hamstrung by, do you think you'll have enough information from the investigation since it's all partially based on what the feds are releasing to them? How's that going to affect your lawsuit?
It's hard to know at this point because we don't know what we don't know. We have received information from various individuals who are responsible for the investigation. Of course, we don't have it all because the investigation is still ongoing. But from what we have been able to gather, we certainly think not only is a lawsuit appropriate against the city, but criminal prosecution is appropriate against the officer who killed Jimmy. We fully expect to see the district attorney do a full investigation, and if he sees what we see, I can't imagine a set of circumstances under which he would not charge this officer. The only thing that I think would potentially derail a full and fair investigation is the city's lack of participation and cooperation with Fulton County and/or the federal government's obstruction or lack of participation with the Fulton County District Attorney.
In your experience, how often are claims settled with just the notice of an intent to file a lawsuit and no lawsuit is ever filed? Is that an option here that you see going forward?
Certainly there is always an option to settle before filing a lawsuit. That is in part the rationale behind giving the city notice by way of the ante-litem statute. However, I don't know what the mayor's policy is in this regard. She is still a relatively new mayor. I don't know how many of these cases have come in under her jurisdiction and what her position will be. So I guess that's yet to be seen.
And does sending this notice set in motion some sort of timetable, or do you have all the time you need or want before filing a lawsuit?
Well, essentially you have, we are constrained by the statute of limitations, which is 2 years from the incident date to file a lawsuit. So there's really no timetable other than the statute of limitations. But I can tell you our intent is not to wait 2 years to file this lawsuit. We have been trying to get information through informal channels as citizens for the last 5 months. If we file a lawsuit, we have the power of the court behind us to request and subpoena documents and information, depose witnesses, and certainly if there is no movement in this case in the near future, that could certainly speed up our timetable for filing a lawsuit, because his family deserves answers.
How much of the officer's background will factor into your suit?
You know, anytime you are looking at whether or not an officer's conduct was justified under the law, you look at his training, you look at his experience, you look at you know, past instances. Is this a pattern of misconduct? And you're also looking to see whether or not the city was on notice that they had an officer who was out here committing constitutional violations, was a danger to the community, and that they should have done something sooner to keep the people safe from this officer. So certainly we will look at his background. We have conducted some investigation into his background, but his previous complaints about excessive force will undoubtedly play a role in our lawsuit.
Can you say, based on what you know, that he should have not been on the streets?
It is our position that there were serious questions about whether or not he should have been on the streets. And certainly, if you were going to continue to have him on the streets, there should have been more training instituted on the appropriate use of force. I think there were instances throughout his career where he demonstrated perhaps a misunderstanding of how he should use deadly force. And I think if you look at his record, you know, there are instances where he has been viewed as disrespectful or hostile to the community that he served. So all of those things we think are things that the city was aware of, and that they should have taken some corrective action on. Now, whether he should or should not have been on the street, you know, I really can't say that without more information, but I can certainly say from what we have learned, there were some serious red flags about this officer, and at a minimum, some corrective action should have been taken.
No amount of money can replace Jimmy's life. And Officer Kim, he violated my son's civil rights. My son was unarmed, he was surrendering, and yet he was shot in the face. Someone has to pay. My son has 2 kids, 1 and 3, who will never get to see their father. And someone has to pay for it. Someone had to pay. It costs money to raise kids. And, you know, them not being able to know and see their father, not even know who their father was. We have to remind them, and we have to keep his name alive. So if it's a city or federal government, someone needs to pay for it. We called him LJ Jimmy, and he was scared of the police anyway. And I'm not saying my son was perfect, but my son deserved to have his day in court. He did not deserve to be executed by Atlanta police officer son Kim. He took it up, mattered into his own hands, and became my son judge, jury, and his execution. And that ain't right. And he should pay.